Malusi Gigaba about the South African stance on all of that. So let's now cross over to Jack Parrock. He, of course, is in the UK, and it's not necessarily an African issue. It's an issue that affects the whole world, and we've all been seeing what's been happening in Europe when it comes to the refugee crisis. Let's get an update from Jack as to how this is going to be handled in Europe. Jack, a very good morning to you. Just talk to us about World Refugee Day in the UK.
Well, I'm in Brussels here, actually, with the European Commission behind me, where the EU is planning its World Refugee Day, obviously with the European Union having seen a huge number of refugees apply for asylum in the 28-member bloc. In fact, 1.3 million people, mainly Syrian refugees fleeing the conflict there, applied for asylum within the 28 EU member countries, most of them in Germany, but also in all the other EU member states. The European Commission has released a statement today saying essentially that this is a global problem that needs to be handled with global cooperation, and that is with regard specifically to the European Union-Turkey deal that was signed back in March, which prevented and blocked people from entering the European Union on the Greek islands from the Turkish coastline. What we've now seen, however, is that a large number of people had now tried to cross the Mediterranean from North African countries like Libya, and there's been a high number of deaths over the last couple of months around countries like Italy. So now there's discussion about how the European Union can engage with those North African countries to try and prevent high numbers of people leaving the coastlines there. But obviously with a country like Libya, which is deemed to be unstable at the moment, that's problematic.
We read a lot of commentary with regard to the refugee crisis and that facing Europe, and basically they say that the world needs a new way of looking and helping refugees and the refugee crisis. I mean, what do you think is going to be decided on in Brussels? I mean, what are they going to be discussing, and the new ways to handle this crisis that is affecting the world?
Well, the European Union has kind of played its cards now. It's done this EU-Turkey deal, and now it's looking into how it engages with Africa. But also they're looking into their operations to save lives as well. That's the crucial thing. There's an operation called Operation Sophia, which has been extended for another year, which is a joint European Union military operation in the Mediterranean to try and save lives. And that's what they're looking at. But also you might remember there was a big summit in Valletta in Malta, which is one of the countries where lots of refugees and migrants are arriving, to engage with African countries as well. Because one of the issues, obviously, that the European Union is looking into is the fact that where these people are fleeing from, obviously the highest number is coming from countries like Syria, Iraq and Afghanistan because of the conflicts and the difficulties there. But there are a large number of sub-Saharan Africans as well that are making their way across to Europe, specifically countries like Eritrea, Somalia, countries that are affected by Boko Haram as well. So they're looking, the EU wants to try and use its diplomatic muscle in those countries to try and bring about some resolution to the difficulties that the countries that people are fleeing from are facing, and try and ease the situations in those countries.
Today, of course, being World Refugee Day, and I mean, if we look at some of the figures that are coming out here, and we talk about 1,740 migrants crossing the Asian Sea to just the Greek islands every single day. I mean, this is just, it's unbelievable. So talk to us about some of the things that are going to be discussed on this day in Brussels.
Well, the events planned here in Brussels today are not so politically motivated. Clearly, the UK's referendum on whether it remains a member of the European Union is dominating the news this week. That comes on Thursday. The event is the World Refugee Day events are being held by the development section of the European Commission, and a lot of NGOs are coming together. But at the moment, there won't be too much policy discussion. It's more just representative and symbolic of a further expression of the EU's desire to support refugees in this crisis. It is important to note that the number of refugees entering into the Greek islands is decreasing quite dramatically under the European Union deal with Turkey, but that deal is now being considered shaky following disputes over visa-free travel for Turkish citizens, which is something that Turkey insisted on. So the refugee and migrant crisis here is in a bit of a weird kind of mid-zone at the moment, where the current deals are holding, but everyone's aware that there could be some further trouble for those deals if the agreements do fall apart.
All right, Jack, on a completely different note, and I certainly, we will get updates from you a bit later on what happens during World Refugee Day, but it is a very big week for the European Union as well, and we have a look at the Brexit referendum that is going to be taking place on Thursday. I know there's so many different polls that are out there and are just, trying to predict whether or not Britain will stay with the EU or if they will leave the EU. What is the latest that you've been hearing?
It's almost impossible to tell now with the polls. The Leave campaign are in the lead. The Leave campaign are in the lead, it seems, by somewhere near around 3%. But it's so difficult to tell from these polls. The UK election that happened last year, the pollsters were way off. And the Conservative Party ended up taking a majority share in the Parliament back in the UK. So at the moment, there's a real sense of worry here in Brussels, specifically, and tension about what's going to happen in this referendum. And obviously the murder of the British MP Jo Cox last week has really flipped the debate. There's also been some heavy criticism of the leader of the UKIP party, the Eurosceptic party in the UK, Nigel Farage, for standing in front of a poster of Syrian refugees heading through Slovenia. And essentially he was saying that these people are coming to the United Kingdom, but the United Kingdom has an opt-out in EU discussions on accepting those kind of asylum requests, and has only accepted 3,000 in fact. So he was heavily criticised for standing in front of that poster and relating it to the UK's membership of the European Union. There's been so many back and forths. The UK Prime Minister yesterday was on BBC, the British TV station, on a television show, answering questions from an audience, was considered to have done quite well. He's fighting for the Remain. At the moment, really it's coming down to the final couple of days where we'll have to wait and see which way the United Kingdom votes.
All right, Jack Parrock, we'll be talking to, I imagine, again this week ahead of that referendum that's happening on Thursday. Thanks so much for talking to us. But Jack, of course, in Brussels, just ahead of World Refugee Day, and lots to be discussed there today.